We heard in the earlier panel some discussion about the relationship of cities and national governments. And we also noted at the Copenhagen Climate Summit that the cities were pressing more than the national governments seemed to be on climate change. Yes. Does that seem to you to be part of the picture?
No, that's absolutely true. And I think here, the type of events like this, the UCLG, the knowledge sharing between cities has the mayors of the world way out front of their national governments in the developing countries, partly because they're learning from each other and they're seeing a competitive edge from going sustainable. They're also seeing the impacts of climate change. And so that is really pushing them towards a new piece. Now, we do work with national governments as well as city governments. And so our job is to help national governments, regional governments, also think about how to give the incentives, the financing, other things that are needed so the mayors can do their job.
Mayor Hubbard?
I would like to say that you remarked a very important point, because we are confronting the effects of the climate change all over the world. In the case of Mexico City, we have a very important changes in the climate of the city, the rainfall patterns, and so it's risky. It's risky in the short term, meaning the next rainfall station in the city. And so we are asking for this. If you take a look from Kyoto to Copenhagen, you can see that in the meanwhile, between Kyoto and Copenhagen, you have a lot of actions in the cities with local funds mainly, maybe 85% or 70%, it depends the city. But as an average, the main effort has been with local funds or funding. And the most major part of the cities in the United States and also Mexico and other countries, Europe also, the same thing, the cities are going faster than the national governments. So the question right now is in front of the risk that we have. We don't have time to lose. So we need new doors, new mechanisms in order to get more money, in order to accelerate the decisions in the cities. So we are working with the World Bank right now, Johannesburg, Mexico City, and several cities which are represented in this meeting, in this forum. And in order to prepare new ideas and proposals for financial mechanisms and flows to the cities who are doing the job, in order to get the results and the objectives and our goals, the global goals, in the shorter period of time possible. So we pretend to present these ideas, those ideas, before Cancun meeting in December. So it's very important to work, and I would say that the World Bank should, and maybe it's going to, have a new proposals to put money directly in the cities' projects in order to get those goals. That's an important point.
Very interesting. But Kathy Sierra, let's take this to what you were describing as the smaller cities of the world, as the growing population wave, where the real growth, the biggest growth is going to take place, rather than in the Mexico cities and Johannesburgs by projection. How does this kind of skill get transferred to those cities? Even in simple things like basic city planning and engineering and so on, in the developing world, there's such a lack of the intellectual firepower in smaller places. Is there something that can be done in by the World Bank or other institutions to help move those cities so they can begin to tap some of the kind of power we were just hearing about?
Well, you know, I don't underestimate the small and medium-sized cities. I think that what I see from those cities, and I think a lot of the mayors that are represented in this group actually come from that cut, is a tremendous vibrancy of learning from each other. And so what we see is a great deal of yearning from South-South cooperation, of being able to go from city to city, whether it's an Asian city trying to figure out how Curitiba did its work, whether it's Asia to Africa increasingly. So there's a lot of that going on, and there are many wonderful examples of what can be done. That's number one. I mean, I think we are trying to foment that type of exchange through our partnership with UCLG, through our partnership of Cities Alliance, which is a partnership with many donors as well as UN Habitat, to be able to bring the knowledge together about what works and what maybe has not worked so well, and to get that out there. So as part of our own strategy, it's moving from not that we want to abandon the Mexico cities of the world, on the contrary, the learning and the vibrancy there is a tremendously important part of what we need to do, but we need to extend that out. So that's number one. Two is to put in some new tools so that some of that learning can be systematized a little bit. So we have something called the Urbanization Review in the bank, which is helping put in a very structured way what are the questions that local governments need to be thinking about in terms of land use, in terms of planning ahead of the wave of people, in terms of how to build public and private partnerships, in terms of how to build a sound fiscal base. And also at the national level, what kinds of revenue sharing schemes, whether they be competitive like the ones that were discussed this morning, whether they be formula driven, how do you put the right incentives in place? It's a big task, but I think it's one where with knowledge sharing, with I think the kind of gatherings that we have here, we'll be able to get access to the people that are going to make those leadership decisions.